Hello, friends. Welcome. And today we're going to talk about something very different. So, the idea is that we're looking at various issues that have happened in the COVID world. And here, I think one of the situations that we face is that now our home and work have kind of integrated. So, in that thought process, we are talking about a topic that is the importance of ritualization for success, right? So, this topic we're going to talk about what are the reasons behind ritualization and so on, and we're going to talk about how to work and study in an online world where you might have a lot of distractions all around you. How to be undistracted? That's going to be the major focus of this video. Now, why we talk about ritualization. So this is from the Bhagavad Gita. This is chapter 1, verse 40th. So it says, Kulakshaye pranashyanti kula dharma sanatana dharme nashate kulam krit namaha adharmo abhi bhavate yuta. What does that mean? So basically it means in the decline of a clan, right, its ancient traditions perish. And when traditions perish, the entire family is indeed overcome by lawlessness. So this is what actually in through COVID, right, 2020 or 2019 as it is called, is happening. So the traditions which we had, right, of getting up in the morning, getting ready, going to work, all those things are obviously going down the barrel. And now the entire family, a lot of people have problems, right, that how do they manage their kids without school, etc. They're not really used to being parents 24/7, so how can they work, and etc. Those kind of questions are coming up. The same thing is about people preparing for competitive exams. They are uncertain about the routine they would maintain, right? Obviously there's a lot of uncertainty, and people, remember, human beings by nature need a target. So if there's no target, the very few people can actually work still, right? So we have those traditions, right, which are being perishing, and we have lawlessness now. So now, in that respect, now we have, there's a high need for rituals. So first question is, what is ritual? So ritual is a set of fixed action and sometimes words performed regularly as a part of a ceremony. So rasam riwaj jo hote hain, wo hum rituals bolte hain. The idea behind the sequence of activities involving gestures, words, actions, objects. The idea is you have to perform that at a certain place. So think about, remember we used to, so every day in the morning we used to obviously take a bus, go to school, right, stand in an assembly, right, recite the same speech, right, and then go back and then start studying. So there's a sequestered place, so there's a classroom, and there's a set sequence which basically will initiate a person into a different mindset and attitude towards his work. So this is the biggest challenge, I think, right now everybody's facing when they're studying online. So, okay, there's an online class. What ritual should I make that, somehow obviously I cannot go to any other place, but maybe I can have a set of sequence which would give me a different mindset, and my attitude will be a lot more serious than I would. So these rituals motivate us. They move us. And through ritual, we build families, we build community, we make transitions and mark important events in our lives, right? Remember, why do we celebrate a birthday every day here? The reason it's a ritual, okay? We create and sustain our identity, and they come in every shape and color. Okay, so this is very, very important, especially more so important because somehow all the rituals that we used to do in the morning, right, have gone down the drain. Some of us don't even get ready these days on time. So, why am I talking about this? So, this is way back, and this is during my first year in college. And there was this one of my friends, Nishant Shrivastava, and he topped the ICSC in class 10th, right? He scored nearly the highest marks in class 10th, right? And I asked him, how did he do it? Because he was pretty normal, he was intelligent, but no, I could see that other people in the class are as intelligent as him, but how could he be the topper of ICSE? So he says he gave credit to chanting the Gayatri mantra before he started to study. Okay, so he said that I used to just pray right before. So I maybe understood, okay, rituals are important. Okay, one of my friends, right, he was extremely good fast bowler. So I asked him, okay, how did he became so good? He says he sings the song while he basically is bowling, so it gives him some rhythm. Okay, so what basically a ritual does, right? It gives you a rhythm, right? Okay, it gives you, puts you in a flow. Okay, so that is extremely, extremely important, I would say, right? So what are the rituals we, obviously follow in everyday life? So when we get a university degree, right, do we just ask the degree by post? We basically go back to the college in a highly theatrical ceremony with codified dress, and we get those degrees, and now we feel okay, we have passed out. We celebrate the Independence Day. We have a 26th January parade, right? We build memorials. We have so many statues, right? So what are all these things? They basically signify that yes, now we have changed. Right now, what about, let's say, the elephants park in, let's say, Lucknow? So what are those? That's a ritual saying that okay, we finally have some kind of equality in India. Now, what are rituals are important? What is the importance of that? So basically, rituals can be seen as healers, right? They are, they, make us move on things, right? So let's say if I've started, if there's a ritual before I start to study or I start to work, right? So what that would do, I would be ready. And once I, let's say, stop working, I should have a ritual when I say, okay, that's it, I'm not working anymore. So there has to be, so it's like, a prayer when you start the school and a prayer when you end the school. So it's a kind of, very good thing if you do that. Now, but the problem with this is in India, a lot of rituals are very, very personal in nature. If you ask a lot of questions, what's a morning ritual, what do you like to do before you go into the stock market, or what do you like to do before you start your work, right? So many contemporary Indians, right, it is a part of daily life, but they don't want to be seen or caught performing it, right? They feel very uneasy. One of my friends used to read the Bhagavad Gita, a few sloks of that before he started to study. So, but he doesn't want anybody else to see that. So, because obviously at the end of the day, some people feel that it's associated with a religion, right? And there's no reason for that. They're meaningless, they're empty, they're needlessly repetitive and time consuming, like the criticism of chanting a mantra, right? It's a just superstition. Or does it make the people, person who's chanting, feel better because of there's some benefit of chanting that mantra, or it's a placebo? So obviously it's very, very personal, I would say. So but whatever you might say, right, I think there is empirical study which would be there. I'm sure that the rituals do play an important role in society, and they will increase your concentration. Okay, right. So ritual is obviously changing. I think today we're having a ritual of wearing a new corona mask. In COVID times, wearing a mask, right, having social distancing, right. So this actually kind of makes other rituals more important. So what rituals would you like to make for yourself, right? I'll suggest a few, but what rituals would you like to suggest for yourself, considering the fact that there's an increased distraction at your workplace, right? Your playground, your college is all subsumed into your room, which you might even share with others. There might be a kid around, he might be distracting you all the time. How do you maintain your indistractability, as we say? So, when this question came to my mind, and I basically started looking at a few books. So one of the ideas I got across a book by Neil Sayal, right? He talked about the fact that distraction is what, actions that move us away from what we really want. So the question is, do I really want to study, or it is just that, I actually want that to happen anyhow, and I don't want to study, so somehow I get that. Okay. So the fact is, I need rituals, and that would act as a trigger, external trigger for traction. Okay. In a deeply religious society in India, it works beautifully. There are other methods of creating traction, right? Other ways of creating internal and external triggers, right, to create distraction or to create traction, I would say. So the question comes is that what drives us? Okay. So, when we talk to various people, obviously there's a pleasure versus pain doctrine. So everybody wants to maximize their pleasure. They want to basically reduce their pain. So even when we think of seeking pleasure, we actually are driven by the desire to free ourselves from wanting, pain of wanting. So a lot of people blame these days. I was just at at this college, and a lot of people was talking about a smartphone being distracting. So one of my students, she's has this habit of checking her phone of every few seconds. Sometimes I feel, but I think a minute or so. But so it's like blaming a pedometer for making someone climbing too many stairs. So it's not like that. So the idea is we have to understand our pain, right? Then only we can actually find better ways to deal with our negative urges, right? It is not just pleasure versus pain. It is also the frequency and the duration of that pleasure and pain. Okay. So we have to understand what is the root cause of our distraction. And it is not about devices. It is not about having a laptop. It is not about having a phone. It is more about other things. Okay. So what is this other thing? It is basically a desire to escape from discomfort. So if a behavior was previously effective at providing relief, we are basically going to use that as a tool to escape discomfort. So basically those phones that we use, the notification, right? It gives you some kind of relief. Okay. So in this study, which I did with a few students, I asked them that do an experiment, and I'd like all of you listeners also to do this experiment. That keep your phone away from you for like a day, and then after that, write to me at my email ID that how do you feel about it? Okay, do you feel relieved or do you feel more agitated? Okay, and if you can do it for like a week and so on, it would be like beautiful, right? And then you can actually write to me how you felt. Do you feel relief? So a few people, they did feel relief. Some people initially felt a lot of discomfort. They talked about. So remember, anything that stops discomfort potentially addictive. So even talking to your friends is an addiction. A lot of people have a need to talk. Okay, they can't stay quiet. Right. So if you know the drivers of your behavior, definitely you can actually take steps to manage them. Right. The idea is there's nothing wrong about talking extra or having a phone. It is about whether it is you are a slave of the technology or the technology is a slave of you. So the question obviously is, what do I do about the distractions? So without techniques for disarming temptation, mental abstinence can backfire. Right. What happens is you take the phone away from a kid, he starts crying. Right. He would even want it more. So we can manage distractions that originate from within by changing how we think about them. We have to reimagine what triggered our behavior, the task, and our temperament. Okay, so what we need, and for Indians by nature, we are social beings, rituals work best. So, one of my friends, right, he talked about, so he's an SP in one of the districts. So he talked about the fact that, a lot of people in his district are dying. Like 5 of them died in the last month, that is in April. So everybody is like really, really afraid. So, so he said, I conducted a Havan today and I'm feeling really, really happy. So that is something that Indian way of, having a ritual, a positive trigger. Okay, right. External trigger, I would say. In the same way, in Ludhiana, a policeman recently died during a COVID infection. So how do I assure my people that, okay, how do I still keep on working to the best of my ability, right? Because I'm afraid for my life and my near and dear ones. So what is the basic issue about this, external trigger? Are we so controlled by other things, or is it the internal trigger which will much is better? So whether my internal motivation to do something can overcome external triggers or not, that is a question. Obviously, it's like self-control is limited. That is what the crux of things, right? But the idea is that it is not. Okay, and there is a concept of we don't really run out of willpower. So I was talking to one of my students. She studies in Milan. So she talked about the fact that the Chinese are different. They don't feel tired after working or after studying. Okay. On the other hand, the Indian thinks that he gets obviously he's either very enthusiastic, right, or he gets demoralized very easily. Okay, so what basically I talked about with her is I told her that it's something of the ego depletion in psychology, and believing we do makes us less likely to accomplish our goals by providing a rationale to quit when we otherwise could persist. What to do basically? So the idea is that what we tell ourselves matters. So if you tell yourself you have poor self-control, you can't do it, it actually leads to a less self-control in the long run. right? Not in the short run. People who have a positive and caring attitude towards her or himself in the face of failure and comings tend to be happier. If you practice self-compassion, if you talk to yourself as the way you talk to your friend, right? They become more resilient. If you're kind to yourself, I think that really, really makes you successful, I would say. That will allow you to have a lot of self-control. Now, so then, I was talking to other people, right? So one of my friends, right, from an Ivy League university in MBA, right? So I asked him what rituals does he have. So he mentioned these things. He said, let's have a calendar setup, okay, right? And I think this is something I can do as well. So create a calendar, right? Every day of the week, what you want to do. Then create a task management, do a task structure. What is the task? So which subject, which area, which thing you're doing, right? If you have to do some sales pitch, or whether you want to do branding, okay, do you want to look at the digital marketing, what all things. Performance management, how would you like to measure it? Daily, monthly, quarterly, annually? What kind of parameters you like to do? You have to set some creativity zones, right? Some experiments have to be done every week. How do you build quick focus in 10 minutes, and long-term focus on projects? How do you maintain accountability towards all this? How do you set goals, right? Setting goals for this and creating, some kind of breathing session, getting relaxed. Okay, so these are the corporate ritualizations that a typical MBA person would do, and obviously these things do work, processes do work. Okay, but what's the problem? The problem with that is anyone who has tried keeping a list, right, knows many tasks would tend to get pushed away from one day to the next. Instead of starting what we're going to do, he says that let's try to do why we're going to do it. Okay, so we must begin with our values, and in India, I think our rituals are in some ways telling us what our value is. So in India, right, Indian doesn't act as an individual. He's always a part of a family, a brother, a husband, a son at the same time. So Western methods for Indian are at best useful but inadequate. So what are the typical rituals for a student? So one of my students, right, he's talked about the fact that I told him about Nishant, and he said that yes sir, it does help. Gayatri mantra before starting really helps. So Gayatri mantra before you start and after you end, right? Other people even preferred reading portions of the Bhagavad Gita to increase concentration. So there's chapter 2, verse 62. So it says, Dhayatu vishana puncha, sangateshu upajayate, sanga samjayate kama, kama krodha abhijayate. It says that when a person dwells longingly on sense object, an inclination towards them is generated. And this inclination develops into desire, and desire gives rise to anger. Then chapter 2, verse 63. So krodha bhavati sammoha smriti bhrittava, smriti bhanshama buddhi nasha panashati. So it says from anger comes delusion, from delusion confused memory, from confused memory the ruin of reason, and from the ruin of reason a man finally perishes. Okay, so you can think about the sense object or anything, be just that you're checking your Instagram or Snapchat. He says, if you think about a sense object for a long time, right, what happens is you will have an inclination towards it. And this is valid for everything. So, there's this very interesting dialogue of Nawazuddin Siddiqui in Sacred Games. He says, a person can actually get used to anything, right? That while he was in jail, he used to get up, wash himself, then get beaten up by the policeman, then again sleep. Right. So, and this went on for 50 days, and he was so used to it. Right. So, the idea is that if you have an inclination and if it's an unfulfilled desire normally needs to an anger. The problem with anger is it leads to delusion and confused memory. And from confused memory, you have ruin of reason, and finally a man finally perishes. So, the idea is, how do I talk to an Indian student? So there's this concept of obligatory duties. Okay, so chapter 3 verse 19 talks about this. He says you must fulfill your obligatory duties without attachment. By performing actions without attachment, one attains the highest. So obviously very difficult to understand this. Obviously most of our students say that sir se to bilkul samajh nahi aata. But the idea is that you actually do a lot of obligatory duties. So do you have any control on waking up? No, you don't. You just wake up. Okay. After that, what you do is your choice. But obviously, you have an obligation. You go up, you brush your teeth. Do you really need to do that? But you still do this. So it's like sun rising in the east, right? So some obligations are there. So in the same way, you have to work. So right. So what to do? So one my student says that whatever I might do, the mind is restless and fidgeting. It wanders away. So how do I concentrate? So chapter 6 verse 26 talks about this, and it says that the yogi should bring it back from that and concentrate only on the self. Okay. And so obviously in meditation, yoga, etc., things are taught how to maintain your concentration. So a lot of people tend to say, one of my friends says archery is a very good, if you teach archery to a kid, it really helps because you're concentrated only on your target. Then the idea being that you should concentrate, close your eyes and concentrate on the third eye. Some people talk about that. Some people just say just sit and just let the thoughts flow. That's also fine. What simple rituals, as my student says. So I talked about the fact that there's a movie Invictus, and a South African captain uses this to motivate his team to play the best against the All Blacks, right? So that is one way of thinking about it, right? And then what others methods can be used for this? Thinking of the national anthem can inspire patriotism in a lot of people, I would say, right? Then listening to his favorite song sometimes can inspire him. Some people say that's I would get distracted, I would say, but some people really like some kind of song right before they really start. Then some people prefer even some kind of inspirational songs, right? So the idea is we need an online ritual as well. Okay, so that is key, that you need an online, right? So the idea is you need an online ritual. Okay, and this needs to be made, and I think we can go off, anybody who's listening, right, we can definitely do something like that. So how to do that? So even as I said, even the most honest teachers have rituals, right? Some people have very weird things. Some people don't change their banyan. Some people, there's a lot of don't change their socks, right? Some people carry the same notes, right, which they have 50 years ago, right? Flow, basically. The idea is, the basic idea is to having a flow, the balance of challenge and skill, right? To reduce anxiety, to create a level of comfort, right? So that is the basic idea. So the idea is that whatever ritual you might choose for yourself, it will be act as a trigger. Okay, so the question is, how do I handle? So the idea is to reflect and refine, right? What worked for me, what trigger works, and what ritual doesn't. So the idea is, when in my schedule did I do what I said I would do, and when did I get distracted? So analyze yourself, right? So when was the time that actually you were really studying really hard during your period in life, and what rituals you had at that time? Okay, so what was working good for you, try to replicate that. Then obviously those things might not work right now. So are there changes that you can actually change and actually live out better of your in your life? So the idea is schedule your time yourself, right? You have 3 domains: work, relationship, and family, and you have to allocate for all of them, right? Even if you don't allocate for any one of them, the others too will basically suffer. Show up when you will say, right? Don't get late. You can always control what you get out of the time you spend, but you cannot control how much time you put in your task, because time is limited, right? So input is much more certain than outcome. And when it comes to living the life you want, make sure you allocate time to your values, and that's the only thing you should focus on. Then schedule important relationships. So some people do deserve love more than getting whatever time is left over. If someone is important to you, make regular time for them on your calendar. Go beyond scheduling days with your significant other. Put a significant domestic chores on a calendar, right? Even like the domestic chores have to be done in an equitable split. A lack of close friendship is hazardous, right? You need to have regular get-togethers. A lot of people actually, friendships die after they get married. So again, you have to keep time for that as well, right? If you schedule, there is enough time. So a lot of people might say, "So time ही नहीं है इस चीज के लिए है," but अगर आप schedule करेंगे तो होगा. And then obviously the question is, is there any work-life balance? The problem is our workday is hectic. It's plagued by constant interruptions, there are pointless meetings, and there is a never-ending flow of emails. So the idea is, the reality is, I don't need to tell you that you have to give time to work. Most of you don't have a choice. All right. And given that work takes more of your waking hours than other domains, it is important that the time you spend here is highly productive. Okay, work can help people live their values of being collaborative, industrious, and persistent. All right, remember this fact that if you are very productive in your work, you will have a good life. What are the issues, right? What I think all of you would face. So perhaps the biggest unknown to the employee is how they should spend their time both inside and outside of work. How responsive should they be after hours? Are they required to attend happy hours or other events full of mandatory fun? Will managers and clients expect employees to fulfill last-minute deadlines? Should they let their spouses know to expect late-night outings when company executives drop into town? Now, these all questions, right, obviously vary from company to company. And there's no real answers, right? So the problem becomes is when you are given a task and it takes longer. Managers self left guessing, right? Is the employee not capable? Is he not motivated? Is he looking for another job? So what is he doing? So their knee-jerk reactions are there. What you do, force people to work more. What does that do? That makes the people to push back in subtle ways. So what does the pushback look like? People unknowingly would do low priority work first, slack off our desks, right? So this happens with my students also, right? They'll slack off, right? If they, they feel that, they're actually being asked to do more study than they actually can. So their slacking off is a normal tendency in students also. Okay, if you push them a little more, they will slack off, they'll give excuses, and they will actually, what happen, they'll harm themselves more. And this thing they carry to their work. So, remember, all the students will become executives, will become bosses someday, right? If you put them under pressure, they will slack. So, what kind of external triggers and, how does lead to distraction? So, one of the biggest challenges, obviously, the ping, dings from our devices, right? External triggers always aren't harmful. They always can serve us if they want to. The question is whether the trigger is serving you, right? So every time you check an email, does it serve you or it doesn't? That's a question that I think you should ask. Then what kind of hack pack can you have? So, I think a simple hack can be when you're working, make a big card and it's saying that please come back soon, I need to focus, something like that. So place a card on your computer to let your colleagues know that you want to be interrupted. You don't want to be interrupted, that is. Obviously, wearing headphones doesn't work, right? Even if you're at home, let's say you're working. So if you tell everybody before you start working that I need 3 hours, so even the smallest child, even your kid who's like 2 years, he also understands that if you tell him, right? And even if he wants to come and talk to you, he'll actually whisper at that time. So explicit signal, right, can really help to block unwanted triggers, right? A very interesting way is, let's say you are doing some very, very serious workload. So let's say you're taking care of COVID patients. So if you can wear a different kind of a vest, I would say, in hospitals and various places. So let's say we make a COVID vest in India, right, which maybe is red. So if everybody is wearing that, it would actually, allow people to, as soon as somebody sees that red thing, everybody would actually think, okay, now this person is for this, and nobody will disturb him, right? And that is, I think, would be wonderful if that happens. What learnings can we have, right? Remember, interruptions lead to mistakes, right? And this happens even in exams. A lot of people, in IITJ, I remember one of my friends, right? He was really angry about the fact that somebody interrupted him to sign, right? And if you get interrupted, you get distracted. So, open offices leads to distraction. Distractions, there's something like programmed distraction, but there's certain things, by the way they are, they'll distract you. Okay, so it's just like accidents happening in black zones or black holes, right? In places that accidents will always happen in a certain place on the road. So you have to defend your focus. Obviously, remember, right? You have to be more focused at that times. Remember, whatever interruptions, so checking email, phones, etc., isn't the problem. It is the habitual rechecking that gets it, us into trouble. So reduce the number of messages. How do you reduce that? By emailing less, right? Delay messages when messages are sent. Reduce time wasting messages from reaching your inboxes. You can always plan that. Spend less time, right? Label emails by each message needs a response. Reply to emails on a scheduled time. Plan beforehand, right? Don't real time communication challenge are not really needed, because remember, nobody is really expecting you to quickly reply to whatever you said, right? Company cultures matters, right? Changing group chat practices, obviously, right? Because normally what happens in group chats, one-to-one communication is happening rather than actually a discussion. Different communication channels have different uses, right? Emails are useful sometimes a chat is useful, right? So it is important that group chat is great, but terrible, because sometimes what happens, the chat continues the whole day. It makes no sense. Okay. Like most of the Telegram groups I see, which people use for preparing for UPSC or CAT, right? They're cluttered. There's no scheduling. There is no clarity what they want to actually get out of that. The end of the day, they're discussing for the sake of discussion, right? So terrible all day affairs, I would say. Then make it hard to call a meeting, right? There has to be agenda in offices, right? Circulate an agenda and a brief document before you call for a meeting. Meetings are for consensus building, right? Creating problem solving should occur individually in small groups, right? They should only be for consensus building. Be fully present, right? Do not be bored about any meeting. Have one laptop, right? Make sure that there's no other devices out inside the room. So normally even in classes, right, these days everybody having a lot of devices, but the idea is at least all the other apps should be silent, so no notifications should be there. Now the question comes is, sir, how do I counter my phone? Right. So the idea is, the first thing is that I normally ask all my students, right, that you are not supposed to have Instagram, Netflix, Amazon Prime, etc., on your phone. That is for old people who obviously have done what they could and now they just want to get distracted in their lives. Then that's just a joke, but obviously that's there. So the idea is that you need to uninstall the apps you no longer need. You have to basically potentially uninstall, right? Social media, YouTube, and you have to shift it to your desktop, right? Get a wristwatch so that you don't use your phone for time. Rearrange, right? Many apps obviously trigger mindless checking from your phone home screen. Reclaim, right? Change the notification setting for each app. Be very selective with what sounds app can send, right? Learn to use do not disturb settings in your phone. What about your laptop? So, I remember one of my friends, Rahul Tattu, he's from Stanford, works at Twitter, right? I think so. He basically had this cluttered desktop. I saw it and I was like, what the hell is this? So it is like a lot of a trigger, right? It basically tells you that, at a young age, maybe you can do that, but, obviously the clutter obviously is not good. Turn off desktop notifications, right? Because external triggers will, distract you. Online articles are full of distracting triggers, right? Like when you scroll through Facebook, right? That's there. Make a rule, promise yourself you'll save interesting content for later. Anything you find interesting, right? Save it for later. Click the link, save it for later. Okay. Remember, you can always give time, right? Okay, 1 hour I will read all these articles every day, but schedule it. Don't on the go do this. What about YouTube and Facebook? Remember, they're full of external triggers. They are criminal, right? I think if there could have been a case for harassment, I think Facebook does that, and so does YouTube. Take back control, I would say, right? Newsfeed eradicators are there for Facebook, newsfeed burners, right? Make sure you remove distracting triggers. So how do I do that? So being indistractable requires to keep distraction out. You need to have a pre-commitment, right? So pre-commitment really works. So one of my friends, right, he never studied before class 9th. And so Akash was his name. And, suddenly in class 10th, 11th, 12th, he became very serious. So I asked him, what was this? So he said that, I had decided that there's a pre-commitment, basically, he said. So an effort pact, he also did. So he made sure that he will not slack off whatever might happen, right? The idea is, if nobody can see you, obviously you can slack off definitely, but the idea is that he said that that I have a pre-commitment and I have a pact that I would definitely do this, and no unwanted behavior will happen. So but that this normally works out for a very small amount of time. That's obviously a problem. And then there's a price pact, and this is my sister does this with her, even her servant and her kids. So they have this habit of really shouting a lot. So the price pact means that every time somebody shouts, they have to pay 100 rupees to the other person, right, or some 20 rupees. So they're effective when you can remove the external triggers, because remember, the reason of shouting is not really the need to give money to others, right? Definitely, but obviously others. So price pact works where distraction is temporary. Price packs are difficult to start, right? Because we fear making a price pact, because we know we actually have to do the thing we are scared to do. Then obviously the idea is, before you do price pact, you have to be nice to each other. So compassion is first most important. If you are not nice to yourself, it's going to be a problem. Then how do we identify ourselves, right? So if one of my friends, right, who counseled me while I did my MBA, he said that what identity you have. So are you a marketing person? Are you a branding person? Are you a sales guy? Right? Are you a selu, or are you a finance guy? So you need to have an identity. So the identity, impact is a pre-commitment to a self-image, and then you can prevent a distraction by acting. So a student of mine, right? So she said, I want to do consulting, right? So the identity basically says that I have to take courses along with that. If I have a finance self-image, I have to take courses. So there's a commitment, and you become a noun, right? So you basically say you're a Googler, right? What does that mean? So basically that says this is some value system that you have an identity to share with others, right? Obviously, and right, other things. Then adopt rituals. As I've always said, keep repeating mantras, keeping time box schedules, performing routines reinforces your identity. So these rituals. So I think being a Brahmin, being a Kshatriya, being a Baniya, all that. What are those? These are basically they do a lot of rituals the whole day, and these basically lead to a self identity. Then finally, right, I think something that I think every company in India needs to learn, because most Indians are badly paid, and what they do is that they take their work home. So my suggestion to everyone is work hard and go home. But the problem is today, work hard, go home. But sir, I work hard at my home only. So I would say that now work hard, I would say, at home. But remember, you need to mentally keep this and this separate. So now it's all in your mind, I would say, right? And I think you really need to do that. For people who would be going to offices, please do not get anything at your home, right? Stay at home, either stay at the office and work there, or come back and work. Right? Don't work at home, or keep. Normally keep a separate place. So most IS offices have camp offices. Right, I'm not sure everybody can afford that, but I think in today's time, I think most of you will need to. I think in the next 1 year with COVID, right, a lot of people will have offices at the places as well. Thank you for listening. Wonderful talking to you. It was a pleasure, right? If you have any questions, do ask. Right. Thank you so much.